These are three of the most popular letters in the entire car world. JDM. It means Japanese domestic market. Typically that means cars that are actually built for the Japanese market, but it's become synonymous with cars that come from Japan and offer a lot of performance. So today we're going to look at 5 iconic Japanese cars that cost less than £40,000, but only just and probably not for very much longer. Hit the like button if you do enjoy it, subscribe if you're new. Without further ado, let's get straight into it. We're kicking this video off with a name that's not just popular in the JDM loving scene, but a name that's iconic across all of the motoring world, the Nissan Skyline. In this case, it's the R33 GTR, which was the 4th generation GTR and has its own place in the history of Skylines. Where the R32 is probably the one that is the most classic right now, and the R34 is the most well loved, the R33 separated the two, being released in 1995 and running through to 1999. Though the R34 does generally capture more imaginations and is a rarer car, it's worth mentioning that the R33 is a pretty rare car in and of itself, considering just under 44,000 R32s were built versus a little over 16,500 R33s. It came with the same engine as most of the R34s too, that RB26 Det, a 2.6 litre twin turbocharged inline 6 block producing the Japanese gentleman's agreement 276 brake horsepower, taking to 60 in 5.4 seconds, which is plenty of pace from standard for a car of its age, though of course being a Skyline it's highly tunable. Nowadays however the hunt is on for untouched models, as the GTR has always been about supercar killing for a fraction of the price. In the 90s people would buy these, tune these and embarrass supercars for fun. Now those modifications aren't quite as sought after and the prices of stock examples are often well into supercar figures, which kinda defeats the purpose of these to an extent, but of course I get the icon status they've gained. One of the best things about GTRs generally is, like 911s, their evolutions. So much of the R33 is similar to the R32, just with perfections to try to make it stronger, like the stronger synchros on the gearbox, the stronger and wider oil pump collar and bits like that. Though it isn't as iconic as the R34, it still had some very relevant appearances in popular media, including in the Fast and Furious as one of Leon's cars known as Big Bird. They're only around £33,000 at the bottom end nowadays, and 40k is enough for a 1997 model with 90,000 miles on it. As with many Japanese cars, rust is the main known issue, though the engines are known to be very strong and able to handle a bunch more power. If we're talking about special old school Japanese cars, it would be rude of me to ignore the 3rd generation RX7, a car that captured the hearts and minds of so many people, only to be replaced by the RX8, which is a reasonable car but does nothing for the imaginations of car people in comparison. The main thing that they share, to be honest, is the RX in the badge, and of course a rotary type engine, which in the RX7 is twin turbocharged to put out 237 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 5.1 seconds, quicker than the GTR, which is pretty sick when you consider that both of these cars were supposed to be supercar killers, so the RX7 did it a little bit better from factory. We do of course have to consider that modifying a turbocharged rotary block can require slightly more specialist treatment, where the inline 6 in the GTR is a little bit easier, so there is that. This engine did however have the first ever mass-produced sequential twin turbocharger to come from Japan, meaning that power delivery was smoother and more manageable than some of its other twin turbocharged counterparts. I think that the looks of the RX7 are absolutely stunning, especially if you see one in person today with the pop-up headlights. It's aggressive in all the right ways despite those flowing lines, and of course if you can get into a Spirit Type R version then you are laughing, but they'll run you a fair bit more cash. Getting one in the UK can be tough regardless though, as just 210 were officially sold into our market by Mazda, though as it was quite popular many people imported versions from Japan, giving us a bunch more variety, which was needed because we actually only got one version of the car from the manufacturer. In fact, there were more imported cars into the UK than there were officially sold ones by 1998. Insane. Begs the question why sales were so slow leading up to it. You'll need to spend around £37,000 at the bottom end to get into one of these, and 40k will get you into a 1993 model with 40,000 miles on it. 5th gear, blown apex seals, heat damage to the engine bay and suspension knocks are the most well-known issues I could find, and they can be hard to work on. We're going from icon to icon here, and easily one of the most iconic Japanese sports cars to hit the roads here in the UK is this, the 4th generation or A80 Toyota Supra, which is more powerful and faster than both previous cars and perfectly good for tuning too, making it one of the most popular cars in the world of JDM enjoyers. The previous generation Supras had proven themselves in multiple forms of racing, even at Bathurst, but this generation somehow managed to be way more emotive, losing the boxier styles of the past and updating the car to be a more fluid design that spawned one of the most beautiful race cars of all time, the Castrol Tom's Supra GT500, which was raced against the R34 Skyline GTR in what is now Super GT in Japan. But it wasn't just the Skyline it raced, it also proved its worth against the best supercars on the planet at the time, including the Lamborghini Diablo, the Ferrari F40, Mercedes CLK, and most notably the McLaren F1 GTR. That really adds a lot to the story of this type of car, not just being a supercar killer in the real world, but on track too, and to do that, this Supra came with an incredibly well-loved engine, the 2JZ GTE, a 3-litre twin turbocharged inline-6 engine producing 326 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 4.9 seconds, and on top of that, of course, it was highly tunable. Spec matters so much on these and can drastically change the price of them. Perfect models will be turbocharged with the OEM active front lip, the bonnet scoop, and be in manual. The interiors are also crazy on these. The driver's seat feels like a real plane cockpit, with the dashboard that seems to surround you with buttons and gauges. That is maybe the one thing that lets these old Japanese cars down a bit though. Their interiors are often so uninteresting when compared with European equivalents from the same era, but then it is each to their own. They'll run you around £30,000 at the bottom end nowadays, and 40k will get you into a 1993 model with around 75,000 miles on the clock, though it is becoming increasingly difficult to get yourself into a manual example within our price range. Generally, these are very reliable with an engine that can hold a lot of power, though there are known issues with rust around the rear and the likes. So I hope you guys are enjoying this video. If you haven't, do hit the like button and subscribe as well if you're new, but I wanted to ask a very quick question. I often see on social media people arguing about whether they prefer supercars or JDM cars, and if you had the choice of owning either your dream JDM car or your dream supercar, which would you have? Now we're on to one of the biggest mistakes I have ever made, which was being born too early and not having enough money in around 2016. The Subaru Impreza P1, a stunning limited edition version of the Impreza, has rocketed in price in recent years, making it the most expensive car on our list at £40,000 at the bottom end, which will only just about get you into a 2000 model with 85,000 miles on the clock. Back in 2016, I was looking at these on Auto Trader for under £20,000. It was a toss-up for me between this and the Z4M, which I was looking at buying at the time. Obviously I bought neither, but how sad would I have been now if I'd bought the Z4M at the expense of buying the P1? I would have missed out on a car that has effectively tripled in value in most cases. But either way, the P1 was built to be the single best road-going Impreza on the market with the help of ProDrive, who, if you don't already know, build some of the world's most incredible race cars and have a long history of fine-tuning Imprezas. But they still didn't mess with the Japanese gentleman's agreement, as the 2-litre turbocharged Boxer 4 in this is still listed as putting out 276 brake horsepower, which will get to 60 in 4.6 seconds. Very gentlemanly performance, of course. Now, ProDrive chair Dave Richards, the same man who was the boss of Benetton and BAR F1 teams, is the man to blame for this car. He believed a homologation special 2-door Impreza would be all the rage here in Europe, as people were importing the JDM examples constantly. The P1 would save the hassle of importing and offer the UK market something special of its own, and Mr. Richards was right. All of the cars coming to the UK market sold within a year. It was meant to do two things: be faster than the Evo 6 and help UK official Scooby dealers sell more cars. And it definitely did at least one of those two things, so the next car in this list will tell you it wasn't quite fast enough to complete the first ask. It's actually known to be quite a reliable Impreza, though some owners have had insane engine problems like big end failure, and replacement parts can be quite expensive on them. Taking the top spot in this video is probably the main competitor to the Impreza in the age-old battle between car people, the Mitsubishi Lancer Evo 6 GSR. Evos versus Imprezas must be one of the longest running competition between sets of car people, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. Are you team Evo or Impreza? Personally, as someone brought up watching a lot of rallying, I'm neither. Both cars capture me for different reasons. One of my favourite rally drivers, Tommy Mäkinen, was iconic in the Evo and won the World Rally Championship for his fourth and final time in this Evo 6, but the Impreza might be the most iconic rally car of all time, given it literally won that award from WRC a few years ago. Irrespective, the Evo 6 is is a true rally car for the roads with its 2-litre turbocharged inline-4 engine producing, of course, 276 brake horsepower, which will get it to 60 in 4.3 seconds. I would genuinely love to get a time machine back to the days of Japan's gentleman's agreement and get every Japanese performance car on a dyno from factory and see exactly what they were actually running. It wasn't a hugely different car to the Evo 5 as the main modifications were focused on cooling and engine reliability, but for me the Evo 6 is the best looking Evo of them all. More aggressive than the Evo 5 and more classic than the Evo 7. It's the Goldilocks Evo, but again I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. Sadly, the Tommy Mäkinen edition is well out of our price range, though it didn't used to be. Literally a few years ago you could get a Mäkinen edition for under 30k, with the perfect red examples costing you around 45k. I literally made a video in September 2020 with those exact prices. Today, however, even GSR models are super hard to come by, and the cheapest I could find was at £22,000, with 40k being enough for a 1999 model with 50,000 miles on it. There are known issues with having a rusty chassis, engines, and clutches as well needing replacing around the 40k mark. Transfer boxes are also known to wear, which you can tell if there's whining from the gearbox. And so that is 5 JDM cars you can get for under £40,000, a lot of money, but actually a lot of car too. If you want to see some British cars instead, then click up here, subscribe as well down here. Huge thanks to the patrons for their support, and you guys are well for watching. I'll see you in the next one.